What if the pursuit of happiness is actually making you miserable? Not as a paradox, as a fact. Viktor Frankl, psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, and one of the most important thinkers of the 20th century, argued that happiness cannot be pursued directly. The moment you chase it as a goal, it retreats, like a shadow. The more you run toward it, the more it runs ahead. We live in a culture more obsessed with happiness than any that has come before us. We have entire industries, wellness, self-help, therapy, productivity, devoted to manufacturing it. And yet depression, anxiety, and a pervasive sense of emptiness are rising in nearly every developed country. Frankl had a word for that emptiness, the existential vacuum, and he had a diagnosis for why it exists. We are asking the wrong question. We keep asking, how do I become happy? When the question that actually unlocks a life worth living is a different one entirely. Not what do I want from life, but what does life want from me? That shift, from demand to response, is where man's search for meaning begins, and it changes everything that follows. Frankl did not develop his ideas in a lecture hall or a research clinic. He developed them in Auschwitz. He was arrested by the Nazis in 1942, along with his wife and family. Nearly all of them did not survive. What Frankl carried with him into the camps, beyond the manuscript they confiscated at the gate, was a trained psychiatric mind that refused to stop observing even in the midst of horror. And what he observed shattered the assumptions of his field. Freud had argued that given the same difficult conditions, people would behave similarly. That circumstance was the primary driver of human behavior. Auschwitz proved the opposite. Given identical conditions, men responded in radically different ways. Some disintegrated within weeks. Others maintained dignity, generosity, even a dry humor until the very end. Some gave away their last piece of bread to strangers. Some denounced their friends to the guards for an extra ration. The difference was not age, not physical strength, not prior status. The difference was internal. Those who had something to live for, a person, a purpose, a work waiting to be finished, survived longer and died differently. Frankl was watching meaning do what medicine could not. Frankl identified 3 distinct roads through which a human being can discover meaning, and they are available to almost everyone, regardless of circumstance. The first road is through what we give to the world. This is work in the deepest sense, not a job title, but a contribution. Something created, something built, something offered, a problem solved for someone else, a meal cooked with care, a lesson taught. The act of contributing gives the contributor a stake in something beyond themselves. The second road is through what we receive from the world, specifically through love. Frankl writes about his wife constantly in the book, returning to her image in his mind during the worst moments of camp life. Love, he argues, is the highest aspiration of the human spirit. It is the experience of seeing another person fully, and finding it to be enough reason to exist. The third road is the most confronting. It is the attitude we take towards suffering we cannot avoid, not suffering chosen, not suffering glorified, but the stance of the human spirit when pain arrives and will not leave. Even there, Frankl says, meaning is possible. Perhaps most powerfully there, because in how a person faces the unavoidable, they reveal and create who they truly are. Frankl wrote Man's Search for Meaning in 1946, but he spent the rest of his long life, he died in 1997 at 92, watching a new kind of suffering emerge in the modern world. Not the suffering of deprivation, the suffering of emptiness. He called it the existential vacuum. It is the quiet, persistent sense that nothing quite matters, that you are going through motions without knowing why, that success arrived and felt like nothing, that you are free, freer than any generation before you, and the freedom feels weightless rather than expansive. Frankl saw this coming. He wrote that as traditional sources of meaning eroded, religious community, close-knit family structures, inherited purpose, human beings were left to construct their own. And many didn't know how. Instead, they filled the vacuum with sensation, with consumption, with performance, with noise. He was describing the 1960s. He could have been describing right now. His prescription was not a return to the past. It was a turn toward responsibility. To ask not what life owes you, but what you owe life. What is waiting for you specifically, and only you, to do or love or endure? That question, taken seriously, is where meaning is found. Man's Search for Meaning is a short book. You can read it in an afternoon. But it is the kind of book that takes years to fully absorb, because it asks questions most of us spend our lives avoiding. What are you living for? Is what you're building actually yours? Or have you borrowed it from someone else's idea of a good life? Frankl survived Auschwitz. He rebuilt his career, his purpose, his life. And he spent 50 years teaching that suffering, the kind none of us can escape, does not have to be the end of meaning. It can be the beginning of it. If this changed how you think about happiness, purpose, or what you're actually looking for, subscribe to Veltrix. We explore the books and ideas that ask the hardest questions and take them seriously. Every week, subscribe. We'll see you next time. If what we covered today resonated with you, if you want to go beyond the summary and actually live with these ideas, there is a platform being built for exactly that. Vortex turns books like Man's Search for